Hey everybody, welcome back. Again, I am in here in the new listening room, which gets all new electrical work finished up tomorrow. So as soon as that gets done, we start putting in all of the diffusers and getting it finished up. So it's moving along, and today again, it's a perfect little getaway for me to get in here and shoot some videos. And we're gonna do another video that I guess you could call teachable moments, because it's just one of those things. One of those times where things come in and you think, what are they thinking? Why did they do that? So I've got a couple of them here today that we're going to talk about, and I'm just going to give you an overview of kind of what's here, and we're going to talk about some specific issues that are fixable issues. And I have a lot of customers out there who are DIY guys, and you guys buy our kits and you build things yourself, and you've worked on some of your own projects and designs, and some of these are just fundamental flaws. And so that's what we're going to go over and kind of point out. And that's really what I do here at GR Research. It's not like when these speakers come in for upgrades that I'm designing something completely new and I'm spending a couple hundred hours listening, and I'm tweaking it again, and I'm listening some more, and I'm comparing it. There's no way I can do all that and then just offer the upgrade for the cost of the parts. I'd have to sell the upgrade for thousands of dollars if I were to treat it like it was our own product. What I'm having to do is just fix audible problems. And most of the problems that we see coming in, they're very audible. Tweeter levels higher than the rest of the speaker, drivers that are out of phase, they're not summing. We see woofers with cone breakup and ringing going on. We see impedance issues. We see all kinds of things. And all of those things cause audible problems. And most of the time, we just go in and design a crossover that corrects those things and addresses these significant problems. Sometimes cabinet resonances, sometimes these empty boxes just ring like crazy. And so we recommend bracing and lining it with no res to fix cabinet noise and just a whole bunch of stuff. And so these two came in kind of about the same time. I took measurements and I've sent it to the owners. And now next up is I get to go in and design some things to fix some of these issues. And in this case, I'm going to design some new crossovers. And I want to talk about these two because they're a little bit higher up in the price category. I know a lot of you guys keep thinking, man, I wouldn't waste any money upgrading those, blah, blah, blah. I'd just buy a better speaker, just spend more money. And I've told you guys many times, most of the time, spending more money does not get you more better. It just gets you less money in your pocket. Sometimes we see really high-end speakers come in that are still riddled with problems. That Eggleston Works that I just shot another video on a few days ago. Perfect example. A super expensive speaker, beautiful, looks nice, and not designed well at all. Complete mess when it comes to the crossover. And the crossover is the heart. It's the guts of every speaker. So it's critical that that's done correctly. So in this case, we've got an Elac. It's one of the newest Elac models. It's a Vela 404.2 model. And then over here next to it, we have a SOC Velocity ST monitor. And this Elac, I think, sells for about $3,700. The SOC over there was $4,400. And Jim, I'll mention, is a great guy and a good friend. And he builds some of the best cabinets in the industry. His speakers were all works of art. And I used to see Jim at the shows and stuff and chat with him, and he was a great guy. And his speakers represented a pretty high value for what he sold them for, compared to a lot of things out there. Jim is retired now. He's quit building speakers, and he's hopefully taking life easy and enjoying life now. So hopefully we'll all get to that point one of these days. I look forward to it myself. Now, these two speakers, let's just kind of go through and look at the highlights real quick, and then let's get into the fundamental problems. And I'll do a follow-up video on each of these where we talk about the before and after, but just these had such fundamental issues that it was, again, teachable moment. And I want to talk about these two. First of all, this Elac had all of this stuffing inside of it. It was the most packed full of stuffing speaker that I've seen come through here in a long time. The box on this thing is really pretty. If you like the finish on there, it looks really nice. It's got a huge port going right down the middle of it, and the port exits out the back at the bottom down here. So you think, well, that's pretty cool, and it's got a nice shape to it. And I know people are looking at it and thinking, oh man, it's got a air motion transformer type tweeter or a Heil type tweeter, and it must be good. It's got good looking drivers and it looks beautiful and all that good stuff. But the problem I have with these tweeters is they're not designed properly. What happens is they take the back of the tweeter and they just put a steel plate right across the back of it, so it's got no rear chamber at all. What that does is it loads the diaphragm. It keeps the level up, but it makes it fall pretty sharply, and it won't allow it to play down very low. Whereas if this, instead of a steel plate on the back, if it just had a big air chamber back here that was damped, or if it was an open back where that diaphragm was unloaded, it would lose a little sensitivity, but it would play down a lot lower, and it would have more of a roll off instead of a knee. And I see that with all these things. These are super cheap. I know some of the companies over in China that make these, and they cost nothing. So don't think just for a moment, because it's not just an average dome tweeter, that suddenly you're getting a really high-end tweeter. It could be that it sounds really good if it were treated properly, if it didn't have this back plate on it, and if it had really good quality parts on it, it could sound really nice. But that's not what you get with these things. And then the woofer looks like it's built nice, but it's got some type of a stiff cone material that does have some breakup going on. And let's look at the measurements, and we'll see real quickly why I've selected this for one of those teachable moments type deals, because it does not measure well. There are definitely problems with this thing, which kind of surprised me, because when Elac first launched their company, they hired Andrew Jones to do their crossover design work. And Andrew's a pretty good little designer. He knows what he's doing. And I've had a pretty good handful of those things come in for upgrades, not because there were things wrong with them, but because it was a nice, well-designed little platform that could be upgraded. And it could be improved a lot, because the crossover parts that were used in them were pretty cheesy. I mean, just very inexpensively built. They were built to a price point, built to a budget, and he did a great job with it. Sometimes there was a few little tweaks that I would go in and do, like the top end would be a little bit rolled off, and so I would bypass the resistor with a little cap value that would lift that top end back up so it wouldn't be so rolled off. Little tweaks. When we had one of the MoFis in, MoFi 8s, it measured really well as well. Everything that he's designed that's been in has measured really well. That one had a huge impedance rise, though, in it, and I went in and put a little impedance trap, but I didn't change the rest of his crossover. The parts quality in those things were fair at best, and we put in some really high-quality parts, and the performance shot way up. But for the most part, he knows what he's doing, and so when this one came in and I measured it, I thought, he didn't design this thing. Like they've got somebody else designing these, and he is not Andrew Jones. So let's take a look at the frequency response right off the bat. It looks a little choppy, and there's a pretty good little hole right where you'd think is around the crossover point, and it is. This thing has dual bonding posts on the back, so I'm able to shoot the tweeter and the woofer independently and see where they fall. Let's throw that measurement up and take a look at it, and here is the issue. Now, when we see a woofer roll into a tweeter, what we want to see is we want to see it sum. Where it's 6 dB down is the crossing over point where they're down there, and we want it to sum, and we want 6 dB gain right across the response there, showing that it all summed and it measures really well. You could also flip the polarity on the tweeter and look for what we call the reverse null. A lot of guys used to do a reverse null test to see if it completely canceled, like we're looking for about a 15 dB hole there where they're completely out of phase. And what that tells you is that when you flip that polarity back, it's going to be completely in phase. What you don't want to see is you don't want to see a tweeter roll into the woofer and them not sum at all. If the frequency response matches the fall of both of those, what it really means is they're about 90 degrees out of phase. And that's what we're seeing right here with this speaker. The drivers are 90 degrees out of phase. So they're not canceling each other, but they're not summing either. And they're leaving a big hole in the response there. And I know if Andrew Jones got his hands on these things, they would not have a hole in the response. They would have a nice balanced response. And this is choppy. And when the drivers are not in phase like that, not only does it create a hole, but it moves things within the soundstage to where they're really not supposed to be. Things are not positioned in the soundstage correctly anymore. The time arrival of the drivers are off, like a half a wavelength off. So that's messed up. There's just no getting around it. That's messed up. And that's the reason that this one kind of hit the list of teachable moments. Guys, when you're designing your crossovers, look for how they sum. If you're seeing them 90 degrees out of phase, it means they're rolling into each other, but there's no gain there. Then you need to change the crossover to a different order. Or you need to shift it to a different frequency so that it's not out of, or not summing properly. I almost said not out of phase, or in phase, but they're not out of phase, but they're not in phase either. So that is one of those things you need to look for when you're designing crossovers. That you want these things to sum. Looking at the horizontal off axis, we can see it drops off fine. Vertical off axis, we can see it stays in, I almost want to say stays in phase or range, but it stays 90 degrees out of phase for a pretty good range. And as you start moving up, you start to see it drop out more. That means it's getting further out of phase as you go up. Looking at the impedance curve here, the impedance shows the port tuning around 47 hertz, but I also see some irregularity there in the port tuning. Instead of a nice smooth trough there, you see it dip a little bit there, where it's maybe indicative of a resonance within that port right there, and it's causing the impedance to show that little bit of a dip. The other thing is it drops to 3.4 ohms as a nominal load there across the woofer's response. So it's a pretty low impedance. And if you look at the tweeter, and the tweeter's 8 ohm load, so there's a little bit of an impedance mismatch there. They should have structured the parts to where they're shunting more across the tweeter and less in line with it, and try and bring that impedance down to where it's a nice balanced response. They didn't do that. And then the parts quality, let's take a look. I took a photo. The crossovers are mounted on top of the speaker. There are a few polycaps in there and a few air core inductors probably in the tweeter circuit, but for the most part, just budget level parts. Nothing you'd see in a high-end speaker. Certainly nothing you'd see in a speaker that's $3,700. Looking at the spectral decay, we can see some stored energy there in the woofer's response. If you look, there's a little peak right there where they're crossing into each other. The woofer has a little lip there, and if we throw the crossover response back up again, you can see as the woofer starts rolling off, there's that little knee there. And I'm using third octave smoothing so I can see the average response. If I took smoothing off, it would look just like the waterfall plot. If you throw the waterfall plot back up there, or spectral decay, and you look at it, you can see that that's more than just a little knee. It's a pretty good little peak there, and there's some resonance there. So that's kind of the extent of the woofer's range. You can't let the woofer play down any lower because the woofer's got some breakup right there. So it's going to be a challenge to get the tweeter to play down low enough to cross to it, because these little tweeters don't play down very low. That's because of the way they're designed and that back plate on them. They just won't go down very low. So it's going to be a stretch to get these drivers to reach each other. I'm thinking, I hope I can make this work. We'll see what happens. Like I said, we're going to do a follow-up video on this thing, and we can see what I wind up doing with this thing. But fundamental issues, impedance or imbalance, and the main thing, drivers are not in phase. It's like, guys, come on, man! Like fundamentals, and that's $3,700. Yeah, you get, man, that's a lot of money to spend on a product that is not well designed. And and I don't want to pick on Elac. They hired Andrew Jones when they first started, and their stuff was well designed. So sometimes, guys, you get your money's worth when you hire somebody to do the crossover work. You want somebody that knows exactly what they're doing, and whoever did that didn't do a very good job. So now it's come to me so that I can try and redesign some things that fix it. Try to get those drivers to stay in phase. Maybe fix some of that breakup in the woofer. Maybe I can get it pulled out of it a little more. Maybe use a steeper filter or something, and design it so that the impedance is balanced. And then I can send those high quality parts out there. Better quality wire. The wire is just it's just PVC jacketed wire, and I'll send something out that'll make a big improvement in how that thing sounds. So another one, like I said, Jim Sock, great guy, great cabinets, beautiful, heavy, really well made, pretty solid box. Little Sales Excel woofer. I'm not a big fan of these. They have a very, I'd say the vocal region is a bit subdued. It's not very natural sounding. It sounds very artificial to me. And they have a lot of ringing in the upper ranges. But this is a small one, so the ringing should be far enough up in frequency that it could easily cross to this tweeter, which is a raw tweeter. It's a pretty high-end ribbon tweeter. I've used it before. They have a very airy, detailed sound. My issue is this: that they don't play down as low as I would like them to. They don't go low. They don't have the attack that I'm used to from like our planar magnetics and things that we use. But overall, it's a nice sounding tweeter. And Jim used pretty decent parts in this thing. There's some Jansen coils in there, but they're air core. And the tweeter looked like had a Jansen coil on it and maybe some Solon coils. And then maybe it looks like a clarity cap in there with the woofer and another Solon cap. So there's a mixed bag of stuff in there. And some PVC jacketed wire, it looks like, and some push-on connectors I'm not a big fan of. But overall, you're getting really high-quality drivers and pretty high-quality parts. Now, why did it make my table today? What's going on with this thing? Let's take a look at the measurements and see what the heck is going on here. Let's start with just a frequency response measurement. And when you look at the frequency response, I think that's not what I would have guessed this thing was going to measure like it. I would have put money on this thing being pretty smooth, and the overall average is still pretty smooth, but there's some choppiness going on there. There's a big peak at about 1500 hertz or so that makes me think there's some ringing or some resonance or something going on. I'm thinking, uh-oh, this isn't good. So then I look at the vertical off axis, which looks okay. I mean, as you move up vertically, it's staying in phase over a pretty good range. At about 12 inches up at a meter, you can start to see them come out of phase a little bit. And the horizontal off axis looks okay. It's a little proud there at 3K, but not bad. Now look at the impedance curve, and the impedance down there on that tweeter end dropped to 2.7 ohms. Uh-oh. That should have been designed, the crossover should have been designed in a way to balance that out a little bit more. That's really rough. But let's look also at one other thing. Let's look at how it measured with the grill on, because he supplied really nice magnetically held on grills. And the green line that you can see here is with the grill, whereas the red line is without the grill. So the grill is not having a huge adverse effect, at least compared to the rest of the response. But let's look at the spectral decay. The spectral decay is the end-all, be-all, tell-all measurement that's going to tell you more about how a speaker sounds than any other measurement you can take, because it not only shows you the frequency response, it shows the decay rate over time. And in this case, right there where that little peak was, man, that thing is nasty. There is a lot of stored energy right there, or ringing or something going on. And I have to dig a little deeper to figure out what it is and what's causing it. And I've seen this before in a lot of speakers, so I kind of knew where to look. And this speaker has a front port on it. And I thought, you know what? That ringing is coming right out of that port. That's back wave inside the speaker is coming through, and it's going right out that port, and there's a resonance there, or there's some internal noise in the box, and it is coming right out of there. So I shoved a big piece of felt up underneath there. And let's look at the frequency response with the felt. The green line is with the port plugged with the felt, and the red line is the first measurement, the way it was with the port open. As you can see, it knocked that little peak out of it. Let's look at the spectral decay, and you can see the spectral decay cleaned up a lot. So let's look at the spectral decay with the port open and the spectral decay with the port plugged, and you can see that's a significant difference. And guys, that is really, really audible. A lot of reviewers and guys out there and designers, they're always pushing really low distortion motor structure and low distortion this, and they're always talking about harmonic distortion and taking some clipple measurements to see where it is. And guys, those measurements are a drop in the bucket compared to what is shown right here in this spectral decay. This output from the port and that ring that shoots way out there, that is 10 times more audible than if it had a distortion peak that was 10%. This is way more audible. This is a significant problem here. And it could be helped a little by a little more stuffing in the box, but mostly just the fact that it's front ported like this, and that this slot and the length and the shape of it is what it is, and it's causing that, guys. So when you're designing your own speakers, all of you hobbyists and stuff out there, keep this in mind. Just because you think that you can go by the parameters of the driver and you can calculate a crossover and put it in a box, and unless you're putting a microphone in front of it and really looking at what it's doing, you have no idea what's going on. And you got to look at the acoustic center spacing, you got to look at the voice coil offset, you got to look at the surface reflection, the diffraction of the edges. There's a whole bunch of things that goes into designing a crossover. And if you've got the port in the front, you have to make sure that port's not making a bunch of noise. If somebody in the design stage here would have measured this after it was done and saw that in the spectral decay, they would have said, okay, that's going to be really audible. So that might be something that we need to address. Maybe that needs to be just a round port and on the back of the cabinet somewhere so that it doesn't have that type of output. So that's another one of those things to look for. An overall beautiful speaker with pretty nice drivers. I like the tweeter. I'm not that big a fan of this again, but this is a pretty high-end driver still. Pretty decent parts. Choppy response. It's just not a smooth response. I used to tell Jim at the shows when I'd see Jim, I'd say, Jim, why don't you let me design crossovers for you for that product line, or help you design the product line? And I remember him saying, yeah, but what are you going to charge me to do that? And I'd say, a percentage of your sales. And he would say, that's okay. Dennis does it for me for free. Well, sometimes you get what you pay for. You have to look at all of the aspects of a speaker and look at every, the big picture and see, are there problems that are going to be audible problems? And I don't want it to sound like I'm throwing a dig out there on Jim. Jim, again, his speakers are fantastic, some of the best value in the industry, and I don't blame him for retiring. I know he's reached that age. We all want to get there. So he had a really good run. He produced a lot of beautiful speakers out there. I would have loved to have teamed up with him, because I would have loved for the design work that I do to look that good. So again, it could be just any little thing that causes an audible problem, and then you're listening to that type of a resonance go out there for that long, and after a while you don't want to listen to the speaker anymore, because that's not part of the input signal. That's added noise that's not supposed to be there, and it's a fixable issue. I don't know if I can fix it with this speaker without just flat out plugging the port and handing it to the customer saying, first of all, you need to plug the port, and then you need this crossover that I've designed that balances out the response a little bit more, and we're going to go from here to up here. But it's going to take a little bit, to get there. It's going to take a little bit of work that probably should have been done from the beginning, but it is what it is. I see these things all the time. So I thought, all right, again, teachable moment. Let's get into these things and fix them, try to fix them, And I'll shoot a new video on each of these whenever I'm done. We'll see what I was able to do with it, and we'll talk about these more. But I just wanted to let you guys know that you got to look at every aspect. You got to really know what you're buying, and if you can look inside and see the crossover, that tells you probably more about how well the speaker was designed than looking at the outside of the box and looking at the drivers and thinking how pretty something is. Sometimes spending more money doesn't get you more performance. It just costs you a little more. We have expensive speakers come in for upgrades too. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you guys in the next video.